So I think one of the things that was very unique in the book of Acts was the fact that for the first time, usually religious groups or religious beliefs are centered around specific ethnicity, and they don't usually go out from that. But you find, because of Christ in the book of Acts, you see a movement of the faith beyond Jewish walls into the Gentile world. And that's where you see a lot of problems coming out in the rest of the epistles, because you now have Jews and Gentiles, and Paul's got to talk about this one body. But I think Esther's point is valid, and I'm glad you said it, because I was going to say it. We do need to start to see ourselves as a state within a state, but not separate. We are in the kingdoms of this world, but we're not of the kingdoms of this world, because we are king of the kingdom of God. So a state within a state is really the solution we should be looking at. How does a state operate within a state, where there sometimes is a clear line, a clear boundary, because there's a difference of value. You mentioned it with abortion as a classic one. And then how do we work with that, and how do we manage those boundaries when they are there? I think the problem is when church and state are separate in our minds, we end up giving power to the state, which is power to secularism. Religious ideology is pushed out, even though it's an ideology amongst other ideologies.
I think it goes back to why we were saved, because salvation is very personal when it shouldn't really be personal, though it is also personal. But Christ came to save the world, but we have this understanding that when we come to Christ, whether via altar call by yourself, I'm personally saved. And we don't understand that we are then entering into a body of nations of people. And if you understand that we are from a kingdom of heaven, we have the King of Kings. We have access to the King of Kings, who is supreme over all other kingdoms, who laughs and scoffs at every other kingdom, who is working all his plans to a destined end. But we are on the whim of every political activity. And I can talk for myself. When gay marriage came, I was so shocked and I was so disappointed, because it meant that I was inactive in the political process. And I shouldn't have been shocked. I should have been on the front lines, trying to ensure that what we say, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Is that just a personal prayer, or is that a reality for us? And I think if it stays as the personal prayer, then we're going to constantly see us bombarded by the policies of this world. But if we believe there's an actual thing, actual reality, we are his will on this earth, trying to push his laws and his policies, then I think we will see a difference in the reality of Christians basically living out the kingdom.
A couple of years ago, I was invited to kind of sit in kind of like the leadership of this group, right, that influences things in my local community, right? At the same time I was given that invite, another friend of mine was given the same invite, right? And he turned it down. But I prayed about it, and God said, go and sit in that kind of committee. So, and well, to be honest with you, majority of the people there were not Christians, right? But what has happened is, right, over the period of time, every single thing I discussed with this friend of mine have been enacted. Do you understand? So simply what I'm saying is, you cannot influence or change what you don't engage with. So you need to engage with Caesar to change how Caesar's think.
So one area that we need to engage with Caesar, but recognize that we are distinct and separate as a state. Absolutely fascinating. Okay.
As we were talking, I was just reminded of Book of Daniel's dream, interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue and the kingdoms. And in terms of the times we're in right now, we're in a time where we're right at the bottom, feet mingled with clay and iron. That's where we're at. And if we remember the scripture, it says that the Lord's kingdom will crush the other kingdoms. And so for me, I will buttress that there should be a separation, because at the end of the day, this kingdom we're in cannot be God's kingdom at all. It's just not going to work. It's not going to happen, because we have different faiths. We have Muslims, who are trying to, they've got their Sharia law and all of that happening, and we've got different faiths that you cannot, it's not going to work, basically, because it's got to be separate.
I'm not sure whose point I'm buttressing, but I heard something quite interesting. The Bible says that the wisdom of God is like foolishness unto men. But we know the wisdom of God is supreme. But then Jesus says that the men of this world are shrewder. And it doesn't mean, so when you think about it, you think, how does that work? Because God's wisdom is much better than the wisdom of men. But I think one of the things that he was trying to say was that the men of this world are the agents of the enemy. Not necessarily everyone's an agent of the enemy, but the agents of the enemy put themselves in positions of influence. And I guess that's just buttressing whoever mentioned Daniel and Esther and whoever else and Joseph, that we are not being put in positions of influence enough. And if we are, we have to understand that when people do get into positions of influence, we got to pray for them, because the pressure to conform is so great. And some of them are blackmailed, some of their families are threatened. It's not a joke. So when you stand for your convictions, it does affect your whole life.
So that's like an example of Tim Farron, a Christian who gets up there, they receive lots of pressure, and maybe they should be supported. Even though I have some issues with Tim Farron.
In the book of Exodus, one of the ways it opens is that Pharaoh saw that the people of Israel were becoming numerous. He called a council in and said, let us deal with these people shrewdly. And basically that's how the Israelites got enslaved. So I'm just kind of wondering, if it was like a parliamentary meeting and they were discussing this and the Jews were there, they could have kind of said, no, we can't deal with our people shrewdly. Do you understand? Because if I kind of postulate that they did not have a representative in Pharaoh's council when that decision was being made.
Let me respond.
And then secondly, the people you've mentioned, Daniel, Esther, they represented the Jew, especially Esther. She was there, so that's kind of my...
It's so important that you raise that, because one thing that was crucial at that time is the fact that they had multiplied. But what was Pharaoh afraid of? He was afraid that they would start to grasp dominion. That was the fear. The fear was that if these people rise up and begin to take positions in our national infrastructure, we will have problems. Now, what he was unaware of was the prophecy that they were not supposed to stay in Egypt. And they did. What happened is when they started to cry for deliverance, what most of us don't understand as believers is a cry for deliverance is a cry for dominion. It is not a cry to say, save us, we're victims. It's a cry to say, rise us up in order to be in positions of government and authority. So just to add to that, is that often what we do is we multiply and we think we're successful. No, dominion is the mandate of the kingdom. And that dominion means the ability to express ourselves without, even under undue pressure, express ourselves, but nonetheless conquer in the midst of that. And I think what's emerging amongst God's people is that...
like the snowball effect. Okay. Should people be a bit like spooked out at the whole idea of a Christian party? Or is it just us in this room that I don't know. Are there any other thoughts that are positive towards having a Christian party that's obviously Christian?
It's a shame that Sid wasn't here from the Christian party, because I wanted him to be here. But, a classic example there is when, even in Israel, where you look at Ezra, where Ezra and Nehemiah struggled. They managed to restore the people to a certain degree, and the people themselves didn't follow the laws that they were supposed to follow. So it ended up quite sort of, it didn't work out well at the end, even though there was a restoration. But this is a challenge for us, and I think Ife had a really good point about this. It's like, I don't want to vote for Christians just because they have the tag Christian, but at the same time, I don't want to vote for other parties where I know their values aren't consistent. So if you look at some of the work that Sid's doing, for example, his manifesto from their party, you would agree with those things in the manifesto.
So
I don't think you have a problem with those things.
So they do have a manifesto.
Or at least some of them. Yes, they do.
That is consistent with what most Christians would like and agree with?
I think so.
Okay, so why should... in fact, there's this quote that somebody mentioned, and he allowed me to use the quote. He said, there's politics everywhere. As a candidate of the Christian People's Alliance, which is different from Christian Party, in Enfield North in 2015, all the churches at Enfield disappointed me, he says. And he just doesn't get it. The party supports everything the Bible stands for, yet the churches told me they don't do politics. So now he finds it strange that the churches are now complaining about the law that prevents them from preaching the gospel. And the thing is, we cannot have it both ways. We either have representatives in both houses of parliament fighting our corner, or we continue with, we don't do politics and keep praying for change, but go on to vote for people that will not represent us and hope for the best. Yeah, so this is a guy who was frustrated. He actually ran for the elections, and he's saying, why is it that no one votes for our Christian party? Even the church are saying no. What are your thoughts on that?
But statistically, is there enough Christians though to get a Christian representative in from the Christian party? I don't think there are there.
I think there are, but it depends. Where are you approaching these people? Are you just going to churches? Because not everybody actually has a church that they belong to or associate themselves with a church, but may carry the Christian beliefs and values. If you only go to churches, you're only going to meet the same people with that same mentality. Whereas if you're actually campaigning on the street, like major campaigns do, you're then able to integrate with people who may not go to church, but also you're kind of, I guess, so putting yourself out there so people are aware of you. I think that's one thing with the Christian party. They only target themselves, so you're only going to get yourself. Therefore, you're only going to get only Christians who go to church.
Okay.
So if you're only, like he says, he's talking about the churches in Enfield, but I'm sure there are quite a few other Christians who may not go to church in Enfield, but live in Enfield, or may be Christians but don't go to church.
So do you think it's that lack of awareness? They're not getting out beyond the church.
Like you only hear about the Christian party on Premier Radio. You will not hear about it on LBC or all these other things, which is what all these other parties do. They go to broad, like even Jeremy Corbyn went to Bradford, goes to different areas. They don't just stick within their form. So I think if we want to change ourselves, we need to go beyond just the church as in a place.
This goes down to the reason why people vote, right? So earlier I was saying that a lot of people voted, like people I know, this is people I know, voted for conservatives, right? With a heavy heart, right? But when we kind of sat down and discussed why did you vote, right? I can tell you that 90% of them, it wasn't Christianity that influenced how they vote, but it was to do with money, like how the Labour's policy, houses and things like that. That's where the Conservatives kind of got their votes, rather than their faith. So I think it boils down to the reason why people vote.
But is the reason that the faith, like just vote for us simply because we're Christian, not because the backdrop is a lot of Christians feel persecuted, feel like what Robert was talking about. You go to your job, you say something and something's happened. It's kind of like feeling unrepresented. Is the atmosphere not kind of conducive to simply even just say, I'm a Christian, vote for me?
I think there's a me, myself and I doctrine in the church that says unless it impacts me, it doesn't bother me. And that's the reality that I think there is a slight change in the gospel that we are often fed. Now you can't point it out to a particular denomination, but the weakness of the denomination in politics is a manifestation of that. And I think, the likes of Martin Luther King talks about, justice anywhere, anywhere is justice, you know the term I mean. In other words, we're often navel-gazing, and unless it comes to our door, or comes to the door of our church, we're not really, there's no impulse to, again, there's no appetite to engage. And I think that's what's coming out of that statement. A little bit of that's coming out of the statement.
I was going to mention that for this politician, it's great that he's trying to do something. He's frustrated as a believer. He doesn't feel that the laws are representing him. So therefore, yes, I want to rally my fellow believers and get us to, support the laws of God, essentially. However, I think that it's also a shame that the churches that he's gone to are saying we don't do politics. What does that mean? Are you saying that we as a people should not be governing? If I go through the scriptures, it's very clear that as a people we should be governing.
Christians should be governing in the UK?
We not in general. When you are born into the kingdom, you are born to be co-governing with God. And the reason why I say that is because in Genesis, when it talks about us multiplying, being fruitful, it also says to have dominion. And so that is for us to take a territory and govern it. So in light of this politician, he's crying for other believers to support him, and I don't do politics, I'm going to just hide my face and just continue to do church from Sunday to Sunday is the wrong mentality. But I think that he's going to continue to be frustrated, if I'm honest, if he thinks that he will be able to change the minds of the whole nation with God's laws. I think there should be a shift, and we should be looking at, okay, if we are a part of a nation, why don't we govern as a part of a nation? Why? I'm not going to try and change your mind, you know, a Muslim or a Hindu. I'm going to actually be a nation that expresses the God's laws, that expresses his heart and his will, and I'm going to do that in a nation within a nation. I think you mentioned that, Fred, and I think that should be the conversation we should have.
I think, Funke, you said something that I disagreed with in terms of we need to go out of the Christian party should go to other people. We haven't even got it together ourselves. I don't know who we're going to get. You know, we don't have it together. The fact that he's saying that means that people are confused. People are going to church every Sunday for their own personal, just very personal, and then Monday to Saturday, they're dealing with other issues, and it's separate from the church. That's the whole point. Church and state means that your mind, your religious identity is separate from your rest of your life. That's basically that's what's being said. And so when you're talking about we should govern ourselves, Lizzie, we should. But until we govern ourselves, how do we expect to govern other people? Yeah, we sometimes say we've got to go into the world, but we can't govern ourselves yet. We haven't yet. Judgment starts in the house, and until we learn to govern ourselves, then people want to come to us. When you see a good people, you want to go there. What's happening there? But no one's coming to us saying, we're begging people, come to us, come to Jesus, because we ain't showing them. If we were showing them true kingdom, you know, what we see in Acts, people be running to the church, people be running to the kingdom. We're begging people to come to us. So we're going to beg people so we can govern them, but we can't govern ourselves, if that makes sense.
I think before we can try and, as I say, govern other people, we as the church need to realise what our position is. I think so many Christians are content with their Christian life as it is. They're content with it being, me focused, my family focused, and then I'll do a little bit of outreach on the side. And I think a lot of Christians are very content with that kind of life, and they don't understand fully the mandate of the Christian. They don't understand fully the mandate of the kingdom. And I think until the kingdom is preached fully in its entirety, then many Christians won't understand the whole, okay, we're supposed to be, if we look at Romans, where it says the whole earth eagerly waits for the expectation of the sons of God to be revealed, we have to actually really deep what that means. And it's like, okay, the whole world is waiting for the sons of God.
Okay. So is the kingdom not a spiritual thing? So when Christ said, my kingdom is not of this world, yeah, like, I'm not trying to be involved in this world per se. Is a spiritual thing. What do you say to that?
The kingdom is both figurative and literal. It's a literal thing because it's literal, it's literal and figurative. Why? Yeah. Because yes, it lives in a sphere where God is, where God rules and God domains, and it's a spiritual thing, and it's in our hearts also. So therefore, you can't say so. But everybody in this room makes up the kingdom. We are the kingdom here. So the kingdom is both a physical place and a spiritual place. It exists in both entities, and I think that we don't understand that we're waiting for the kingdom. Oh, when I get to the kingdom, I get to heaven. No, babe. It says thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven, as it is in heaven. So earth is supposed to replicate heaven, and that's what it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to, it's not an end time, okay, when the second coming comes, when it's Armageddon. No, it's supposed to be a now. It's supposed to be we are the kingdom now. We shape and we govern the kingdom. So until we fully understand what the kingdom is, I don't think it's possible for us to have a Christian party or try and govern other people, because we don't even understand what we are. We don't understand how powerful we are.
I think a lot of churches don't know how to even go about, like Esther was saying, having that dominion, because they've never experienced it. And I just think of, for example, when black people came over, they started their own churches, but then as a result, they never ever dealt with racism. It was almost like it didn't happen. So in a way, it's almost like I feel like there's a bit of maybe even an inferior complex, and maybe there's a major identity issue that the sister addressed there. And I think that's a part of the problem. I think a part of the issue is that we don't really maybe even know how to tackle these things, and as a result, it's easier, we play it safe, and it's because it's outside our scope, we just don't know. And I think that's a part of the problem.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a bit of fear.
There's a kind of loss of identity in terms of understanding that we belong to a kingdom, and therefore we don't know how to respond to these things. Okay, thank you so much. Fact, round of applause. That's been. Can we just clap for Robert again? That was really good. I really appreciate that you come down, and we appreciate every contribution here. I think we can literally write a book, like if you say some good stuff. So just a plug here. So Discover Citizenship is something that we offer as a ministry. So if anybody's interested in a one-on-one session or a presentation, I can come to a place. We can talk about kingdom citizenship. And also the books that you have on your tables as well. Feel free to take those home as well. You can go online to the restorecitizenship.org. Yeah, that's my son there making noise. Yeah, restorecitizenship.org/feedback. And there you can select if you want to book like a Discover Citizenship session. Or also you can also speak to Joke or myself or Ade afterwards if you want to make that happen. Please give us feedback on how do you feel this went. This is our first meetup. I'm happy that it's happened. So go to that same link, give us feedback, honest feedback. We want to know, we always want to improve in one way or another. And that's it. Thank you. Also, lastly, actually, so we will be looking to do another meetup in the future. We're not exactly sure what topic to take next, but we're always open to any topic you want to present. Right? It can be anything. I mean, if you're on the WhatsApp group, you know that we talk about all kinds of stuff. Right, so we're exploring that, and also we're exploring abortion being another topic as well, and a whole range of stuff. So please give us a shout and give us your feedback. Thank you. Yeah.